Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. So I've been planning to do this story now for about a month and a half. It's not just breaking, but it's still very pertinent, especially to African American people. And I haven't seen a lot of people covering this. And as I said, it's really dangerous. And I'm talking about Trump's NSPM 7. NSPM 7. Exactly what is it and what makes it so dangerous? So we're going to go through it so that you can understand why I'm taking time to make this video. All right, let's go to another screen. So as we see here, this NSPM 7 is one of Trump's executive orders. Hey, family, do you believe in the work we're doing? Does our content speak to you? Do you appreciate our in-depth legal analysis and political commentary from an African-American perspective? Do you believe it matters to our community? Then don't just watch from the sidelines. Please click that membership button and become a member of the 2% Club today. That's right, we need just 2% of our subscribers to become channel members. For just $4.99 a month, that's less than 20 cents a day, you'll help us keep creating powerful content that defends our democracy, demands justice, and develops a strong African-American community. But if you want more, at $9.99 a month, which is only 33 cents a day, you'll get access to exclusive members-only live streams, bonus content, and behind-the-scenes updates. And for just $14.99 a month, which is under 50 cents a day, our top-tier members get access to live Zoom calls, strategy sessions, and a direct voice in shaping this movement. We're not just building a YouTube channel. Folks, we're building a movement based on righteousness and justice, just what our community needs in a time of disinformation and division. So if you believe in what we're doing, click the membership button and join now. Become a member of the 2% Club today. Let's build something powerful together. And to be specific, NSPM 7 is an acronym for the National Security Presidential Memorandum 7. So NSPM 7, again, stands for the National Security Presidential Memorandum 7. It's the 7th National Security Directive issued by President Trump in 2025. It orders federal agencies to target what he calls domestic terrorism and organized political violence. It expands federal coordination and investigative reach over political groups inside the United States. This memo marks a shift toward treating domestic political activity as a national security threat. Let me read that last sentence again because this is why this is so dangerous. This memo marks a shift toward treating domestic political activity as a national security threat. Domestic political activity, marching, protesting, and all that sort of thing. This particular memorandum, this executive order, has the teeth to treat it as national security threats. And one of the things that stands out about NSPM 7 is its vagueness. It's really vague. So it can be interpreted and defined in many ways to cover a whole lot of activity. All right. So let's get into it because you need to understand this thing. So this is the executive order, and we're going to read through some of this. Okay. So Section 1, domestic terrorism and organized political violence. Heinous assassinations and other acts of political violence in the United States have dramatically increased in recent years. Even in the aftermath of the horrifying assassination of Charlie Kirk, some individuals who adhere to the alleged shooter's ideology embraced and cheered this evil murder while actively encouraging more political violence. This was preceded by the 2024 assassination of a senior healthcare executive in the 2022 assassination attempt against Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Two separate assassination attempts against my own life in less than 3 months took place during the 2024 presidential election cycle. Riots in Los Angeles and Portland reflect a more than 1,000% increase in attacks on U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE officers since January 21, 2025, compared to the same period last year. Just yesterday, a shooting targeting an ICE facility in Dallas resulted in multiple casualties. Separate anti-police and criminal justice riots have left many people dead and injured and inflicted over $2 billion in property damage nationwide. So the reason why Trump released NSPM 7 is because of the assassination of Charlie Kirk primarily, as well as assassination attempts on his own life, and because of the killings of folks at ICE facilities and so on. So this is their response to that. This kind of goes back to what Trump called during the campaign trail, the enemies within. And he's defining the enemies within as those who dissent from his administration. Now, he focuses on criminal behavior. And as a criminal defense attorney, let me just warn you that if you're going to push back against Trumpism, I strongly advise you not to do so criminally. That means no riots, no violence, no interference with federal agents, none of that sort of thing. You can push back, you can be at the marches, you can be at the protest without doing any of that. And we should push back. If our conscience so leads us to push back, it's a First Amendment right. It's protected by the United States Constitution. The very First Amendment gives us the right to protest peacefully, non-criminally. All right? So we can protest and push back in dissent, despite this memorandum, but do not engage in criminal behavior, because then that's when you can easily get caught up with this particular executive order. So he goes on to say, this political violence is not a series of isolated incidents and does not emerge organically. Instead, it is a culmination of sophisticated, organized campaigns of targeted intimidation, radicalization, threats, and violence designed to silence opposing speech, limit political activity, change or direct policy outcomes, and prevent the functioning of a democratic society. Well, yes, of course, organizations can form to do these things, so long, again, as what they're doing is non-criminal, peaceful, and covered by the First Amendment. All right? A new law enforcement strategy that investigates all participants, listen to that, in these criminal and terroristic conspiracies, including the organized structures, networks, entities, organizations, funding sources, and predicate actions behind them is required. So I'm saying that those of us who dissent against Trump's policies, like Project 2025 is anti-Black Project 2025 policies, we have the right to do so. But we need to distinguish ourselves. And by the way, we have the right to organize and do so. But we need to distinguish ourselves from those who have done so in a non-peaceful way or in a violent way. All right, that is not permitted, period. I've represented some of those people, and that's not permitted. These campaigns often begin by isolating and dehumanizing specific targets to justify murder or other violent action against them. All right, there should be no participation with anyone or any group who is fomenting violence or dehumanizing someone for the purpose of murdering them. All right, that's not what peaceful protest is all about. Peaceful protest means just that, peaceful, nonviolent, no riots, etc. But at the same time, making your voice known and heard against policies that you disagree with or against an administration that you disagree with. The moment we can't do that, then we have absolutely gone from democracy to something else, autocracy, authoritarianism, or something else. So you have the right to do it, but you have to do it. And as a criminal defense attorney, that's why I keep harping on this, because I've represented folks who have been accused of these things, right? And some didn't do it. Most of them, all of the ones we represented didn't do what they were accused of doing, and we got cases dismissed. But there are folks, I would say a minority of people, who do some of this stuff. And that's why I'm saying distinguish yourself from those folks. Now, you take, for example, the last No Kings March. To my knowledge, there wasn't any violence, any riots, nothing like that with those several million people who showed up, nothing like that. Everyone did exactly what they were supposed to do at those rallies, and that is to peacefully protest. And I'm just saying this thing here, this NSPM 7 memorandum here, they have this in their back pocket, and they can use it against people who protest in the wrong way. It's one of the reasons why I'm going through this, with a small tooth comb here. These campaigns then escalate to organized doxing, where the private or identifying information of their targets, such as home addresses, phone numbers, or other personal information, is exposed to the public with the explicit intent of encouraging others to harass, intimidate, or violently assault them. I mean, those things shouldn't be done. I mean, you just shouldn't be doing those things. And by the way, MAGA does those things as well. But you shouldn't be doxing people. Shouldn't be, putting out their information for the purpose of encouraging violence against them, assaults and attacks and so forth. No. As in the case of several ICE agents in Los Angeles being doxed, the goal of these campaigns can be to obstruct the operations of the federal government as well as aid and abet criminal activity the federal government is lawfully pursuing. These campaigns are coordinated and perpetrated by actors who have developed a comprehensive strategy to achieve specific policy goals through radicalization and violent intimidation. I read the story this morning, actually, of a judge in New Jersey who allowed a case to move forward against the congresswoman out of New Jersey, and the judge in that case allowed the case to move forward despite her arguments that it is selective prosecution, that she was doing her job as a congresswoman, and so on. The judge allowed that case to move forward. So it doesn't mean that she will ultimately be convicted, and she is absolutely presumed innocent. And I've seen the video and have seen it a couple of times, and I just don't even believe they should have brought the charges in the first place, right? But they did, and that's what I'm saying. It's this type of executive order that sets up people for that very thing. And again, the message you should get from what I'm saying is, yes, you have the right to protest, but you got to do it right. You got to do it right. You cannot interfere with their duties. You can't do that. You certainly can't be violent. You certainly cannot riot, loot, any of that. I've said that so many times in these videos, and I say it because, again, as a criminal defense attorney, I've represented such people, and I don't want to see anyone get in that sort of situation. All right. This goes on to say there are common recurrent motivations and indicia uniting this pattern of violent and terroristic activities under the umbrella of self-described anti-fascism. Well, obviously, this is getting at Antifa, right? These movements portray foundational American principles such as support for law enforcement and border control as fascist to justify and encourage acts of violent revolution. This anti-fascist lie has become the organizing rally cry used by domestic terrorists to wage a violent assault against democratic institutions, constitutional rights, and fundamental American liberties. Now, I don't know anyone who considers it to be anti-American, right, for law enforcement to do its job or border control. I certainly don't, right? It's just that we want those things done consistent with the law, observing people's due process rights, observing folks' equal protection rights, just doing it lawfully. But again, I don't know anyone who considers it to be fascist to enforce the law lawfully. That's not what I'm hearing. That's not what I'm seeing. I don't know that, I wouldn't say there are no people who are like what Trump is describing here. But for the most part, like I said, that however many millions of people that were at the No Kings March here recently, nothing went on like that. Nothing. If this was as pervasive as this NSPM 7 memo suggests, then it seems to me something would have happened then. But it didn't. Let's see here. Let's go back. Common threads animating this violent conduct include anti-Americanism. I really want you to hear this. Common threads animating this violent conduct include anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity support for the overthrow of the United States government. Wow. Couple of things to observe from this phrase. Number one, anti-Americanism. Protesting is as American as it gets. America was born in protest. America was born in dissent. It is the reason why the framers would not ratify the Constitution until they had included the Bill of Rights. First of which is the First Amendment. So protesting is not anti-American. Protesting is quintessential Americanism, so long as it is peaceful. Now, we know, of course, the Revolutionary War broke out. That was a protest, and it certainly was not peaceful. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about some sort of an American revolution, right, where arms are pulled out and two opposing armies are facing off. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about protesting policies, dissenting against policies and in an administration that we don't like the direction it is going. So that should be done peacefully. And then you have to ask the question, exactly what is anti-Americanism? That's not defined here in this NSPM 7 document. What is it? Because without a definition, it could be applied to a range of behavior and activity. Right? Anything could be deemed as anti-Americanism. And the same is true with anti-capitalism. Is it now illegal to be a socialist? Is it illegal now to be a democratic socialist? Because one was just elected over the city of New York. Is it illegal to be a communist? Is it illegal, in other words, to be anti-capitalist? So then what exactly is meant by anti-capitalism? And third of all, anti-Christianity. I'm a preacher. I'm a gospel preacher and have been for 40 years, a dedicated, committed Christ follower. But even I don't understand what anti-Christianity means in the minds of other people. Now, if someone is openly hostile toward Christianity, we know exactly what that means. But suppose someone has a different brand of Christianity. Suppose, for example, someone is anti-white Christian nationalism or anti-white Christian evangelicalism. What about someone, I did a video recently about white theology. I am anti-white theology. So is that covered under this very vague word of being anti-Christianity? What about atheists? So again, what does anti-Christianity mean? Because it is so broad, it could include an array of activities. And that's why this thing is so dangerous. It's one of the reasons. So let's go back and read it. It says, common threads animating this violent conduct include anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity support for the overthrow of the United States government. I mean, clearly anyone who is violent, anyone who's propagating overthrowing the United States government, whether it is deemed anti-Christianity, anti-American, anti-capitalism, it is wrong for any reason. Any reason. Okay? Extremism on migration, extremism on race and gender. Now, much of what I be doing here, sitting behind this mic, is advocating and promoting racial justice. So at what point is what I'm doing as a civil rights attorney, criminal defense lawyer. Where does it become extreme? Now, of course, again, we know violence is extreme. We know that rioting is extreme, throwing bricks, throwing rocks, interfering with law enforcement. All of those things, that's extreme. That's where you've crossed the line. But see, without there being a clear definition of what extremism is in terms of migration, in terms of race and gender, then they could apply that to almost any activity, which is precisely what concerns me. At least one of the things. All right? So this is out here. As described in the order, well, let me finish reading. Extremism on migration, race, and gender, and hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, religion, and morality. Wow. So most African American people, for example, hold traditional views on family, religion, and morality. Of course, like any group of people, any ethnicity, we have folks who don't agree with that, folks who don't uphold these things. But that's a part of any ethnicity, any group of Americans. But for the most part, we hold those views. But what does that mean in the minds of the folk who are currently running the government? That's the ominous aspect of this. Where do they draw the line? As described in the order of September 22nd, 2025, designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, the groups and entities that perpetuate this extremism have created a movement that embraces and elevates violence to achieve policy outcomes, including justifying additional assassinations. For example, Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin engraved the bullets used in the murder with so-called anti-fascist rhetoric. So listen, I've said it so many times, I'll say it again because I believe it strongly. Charlie Kirk should not have been assassinated for the things that he said and believed. That is a straight up injustice. That was heinous. I've used these, I've said that it is sinful, it was sick, it's satanic and senseless. That young man, 32 years old, would have been old enough to be his father, should be here with his wife and children. All right, so we can say that full stop. But I'm simply saying, and I disagree, by the way, I disagree with a lot of what Charlie Kirk said. A lot. Strongly disagree with much of what he had to say, especially around the issues of race. And a lot of what he said was hurtful to me and to many other people about race. And it was harmful. But that still doesn't justify his assassination. What we do in this country, or should do, is we just get on our microphones and we respond to Charlie Kirk. And we state our case. And we say what we think. We refute what he says. Not with bullets. Not with bullets, but with books, ballots, and so on. So this is just a taste of what this NSPM 7 does and what it can do and why, again, it is so ominous. There's much more here, but I'm not going to belabor it. You can read it yourself. I advise you to do so. Again, this is an executive order that Trump signed back in, I want to say October, maybe even September. Let me, well, I can't go back, but yeah, it can criminalize a whole lot of legal activity. Obviously, it mentions the activity that I agree should not happen, but there are gray areas that send out a silencing type of message, a message that says we have something here that we can use against you if you dissent. And what I'm saying to you is, so long as you do your dissenting, your protesting, your marching legally, constitutionally, peacefully, non-violently, no rioting, no throwing bricks, none of that, you have the right to do those things. And you should do those things as your conscience leads you. And you will or should be fully protected. But it is ominous. It is really ominous. I could go to the part in this thing where Trump, promises to unleash the government on folks who crosses this. All right? But just know that it's in here. There's this part here that talks about the JTTFs, okay, which are the National Joint Terrorism Task Force, something that's been in existence for a while now, but they're being used now against the so-called enemy within. We've always had domestic terrorism, but protesting peacefully against an administration is not something that should warrant JTTFs. All right, so yes, protest, speak your mind, make your voices known, especially at the ballot box. But just do it peacefully. No violence, no interference. And that can be something really simple. That could be really simple. That could be you, if you see ICE or federal agent or any law enforcement. Many states have similar laws on the books. And you can get too close and it be deemed interference. You can be shouting something that is interrupting to what law enforcement has done, and that can be deemed as interference. So you don't have to physically put your hands on anyone in the course of them doing their official duty, but you can interfere in other ways. There are federal and state laws prohibiting that. But again, stay away from those things, do it the right way, and you absolutely can protest your government. If you have a grievance against your government, you have the First Amendment right to protest against it in many different ways. Peacefully, non-violently, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Don't want to get jammed up with this thing here, this NSPM 7. All right? So I wanted to share this video. I've been intending to bring it to you for quite some time now, but this is the right time, I suppose. Things happen when they're supposed to happen. All right, so I am Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Thank you for watching this video. And as always, stay woke.